What's up gamers, DreamcastGuy here, and today is a beautiful day because we just started to get the first official reviews about the PlayStation 5, and it seems like a system that's both very impressive and also slightly different. Now we're going to be going through a bunch of different reviews today, checking out different stuff they love, things they hate, and also checking out some stuff like comparative load times to the Xbox Series X. Now before we even start getting into a bunch of this information, I just want to make it clear I am excited for this system already because I just want to see what it's going to be like. But this next generation is understandably going to be a shift. The last couple generations, even going back like 20 years, things were noticeably different. If you bought the Nintendo 64 and then jumped to the PlayStation 2 and then jumped to the Xbox 360, each generation was bigger, it was more beautiful, and it was more obvious that things had managed to change. I mean, after all, I've been gaming so long, I remember when games were first coming out in HD, which at the time was a very big deal. Well, with the PlayStation 5, things aren't going to be as visually stunning, and instead are going to be more about gameplay changes and, of course, this big old beefy controller. So this morning I decided to wake up, and the embargo is now up. People are allowed to talk about what's different, what's good, and what is slightly bad about the PlayStation 5. And as I go through a bunch of these reviews, I'm kind of impressed by how much people are just kind of very intrigued by some of the Sony decisions being made here. Now I want to begin with this clip over on The Verge. This is a section of it, and they talk a lot about how one of the most substantial changes is, as I've said already, not the graphics, but instead is this controller. Now, I want to talk about this for a second, and then I want to go through some different stuff. I'm very curious about backwards compatibility and some of the console features that I do want to show you. But real quickly, I find it interesting that people in a lot of these reviews have been talking about how the haptic feedback in the controllers is actually more substantial. So basically, while you're playing it, it can make it feel like you're walking on ice, make it feel like you're having rain, it can give a graininess like sand between your toes, all through the haptic feedback triggers. Now that sounds a bit preposterous, but we have seen this in the past already with the Nintendo Switch. The HD rumble system that they put into that, there was some interesting stuff in those Joy-Cons that could simulate things like one of the things they did in one of the mini games on the Nintendo Switch would make it feel like there were ice cubes falling into your glass, and it really would perfectly simulate that through a little bit of a jingle jangle. The haptic feedback in general sounds like something that will be interesting, especially in first-person shooters and racing games. Also, if whenever we get like another Uncharted, I'm kind of curious how much we can do with this, because obviously this is actually a pretty big, beefy controller, and things are about to be different. Now, before we even continue on this review of reviews, I do want to mention that these people have had the systems for a while. These are not just impromptu off the cuff. This morning there is actually a bunch of reviews also being posted for Spider-Man Miles Morales. My Miles Morales review will be up next week. But now, let's take a look at something that I thought was interesting, which is that GameSpot has decided to put together some backwards compatibility load times. Now, this is actually very important because it's giving us a chance to see the difference between the Xbox and the PlayStation 5, but also the biggest new addition to this next console generation is the solid-state drives. For now, over a year, I've been talking about how this is going to be a big shift in the way people make games and the way we play games. And you can see that what I find fascinating is almost everything loads ever so slightly faster on the Xbox Series X. Now, this is interesting to me for a variety of reasons, but something I do find interesting is the fact that the Xbox Series X, despite the fact that it is the same price, does seem to be better at being a third-party machine. Now, I'm buying both, but I am more excited for my PlayStation 5 because of the exclusive games. But this whole quick resume feature is interesting, and one of the complaints I have seen about the PlayStation 5, perhaps the biggest complaint I've seen about the PlayStation 5, is that it does not have this quick resume feature. So see, they're doing all sorts of different tests that basically show, you know, your system can boot up relatively quick, but the Series X is faster. So this is still cool to me. Like, even if the PlayStation 5 is slower by a couple seconds, I am still enamored with this idea of, how we're just going to be jumping into and out of experiences so much faster. Now, I have actually heard a little bit of stuff through the grapevine when these PlayStation 5s were first going out. Something I was told is that there were some secret features that were not initially advertised. Cool things that were coming out that were being worked on that you wouldn't see for a bit. And now we're finally actually hearing about these. Now, when people were playing the PlayStation 5, somebody did tell me that there was a playtime counter. I do think that this is cool. PS5 tells you how long you've been playing games and includes previous PS4 playtimes. So this is something that works well with the Nintendo Switch. I think it's really cool. So basically, while you're playing anything, it'll actually have a play timer that doesn't need the game to tell it to you. Now let's go to a couple more reviews. Now this is over on VentureBeat. Here is where I feel like they're kind of saying, temper your expectations a bit. The next generation is different. Faster games, prettier games. The other big PS5 features are inside the controller. This includes the solid-state storage drive, inside the console. This includes the solid-state storage drive, which Sony has been touting since it announced the console. The SSD has faster load times for games and other software. This will be the biggest difference you notice between the PS4 and PS5 games. If you've ever played an open-world title on PS4, you know that you tend to sit through some long loading screens when using a fast travel option. In both Astro's Playroom and Miles Morales, teleporting your character to another level or another game takes just a few seconds. It makes for a more seamless experience. Now that all sounds fantastic. For graphics, game performance feels better all around. Miles Morales, like a lot of big PlayStation 4 titles, lets you choose between a performance and fidelity video options, and at any point you can do this from the options menu. Performance means better frame rates. Fidelity means better resolution and other visuals. This just looks so freaking good. I am absolutely freaking ready for it. It sucks that you'll still have to make a compromise, but each choice gives you a better result. In performance mode, Miles Morales gives you a consistent 60 frames a second that looks sharp and beautiful. The fidelity mode takes things down to 30 frames a second, but the resolution is sharper and it turns on ray tracing. I love 60 FPS a lot, but in a lot of these games that are going to have the decision between higher frame rates and better visuals, I kind of think I'm going to choose better visuals at times. I do think that the next generation, I'm glad that we're finally embracing what I think will be the standard, which is 60 frames a second, but it does suck that at launch, this cross-generational thing I do think is holding things back a little bit. A lot of games right now that are coming to the PlayStation 5 are also coming to the PlayStation 4. Miles Morales, Demon's Souls isn't. It sounds like Horizon Journey to the West, or what is it called, Forbidden West. This is going to be on the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 5. I do think as we get away from the previous generation, things are just going to get better, they're going to be prettier, and they're going to get a lot more streamlined because they're only having to make it for a solid-state drive system. But while we're in this interim, things are just going to be a little bit foggy. In all the different articles I've been reading about this, something that's kind of been intriguing to me is how much people are just impressed by how it feels good to even be on the PlayStation 5. And what I mean by that is, like, this is a section from Game Informer, and I've noticed a lot of people kind of hate Game Informer now. They say that they seem a little bit like corporate shills, but even if you do think that this is a crappy website or whatever, I do want to take a look at the specific section here, which is about the user experience. This is obviously basically how you're going to be interacting with your system when it doesn't just come to picking up the controller and playing a game directly. Raw power is great, but the potential can be wasted if the way you interact with the console is tedious. Thankfully, the PlayStation 5 provides a slick dashboard and easy-to-access content most users will want, alongside deep customization options and an attractive overall aesthetic. While the new dashboard has been wholly redesigned, longtime PlayStation users will recognize the legacy of the X cross-media bar. This has been the basis of organization. Horizontal game maps, yeah, okay, we all know how that means. Basically, you have all your different stuff, so it's like, oh, here's where you'll put pictures, here's where your games will be. Super easy peasy lemon squeezy. But at the top of a PlayStation button, you can pull up a customizable control center, a second horizontal set of icons that represent common tasks. The control center can be tweaked at will, adding or subtracting items you commonly use, which is handy. Do you regularly turn on Spotify to listen to tunes while playing? check the box and you can have access to music. Mostly play solo. Get rid of the basic game base icon that governs voice chats. If you instead play a lot of multiplayer, the game base can be offered to expand party options beyond voice chat, including a quick way to share your screen so you can watch what your buddy is doing in their game even while you might be playing something else. This sounds revolutionary. Already, I am so excited because I do play a lot of games online, but I'm also just intrigued by the idea of customizing how we're going to interact with the game experience. I've been playing more games on my PC the last couple months as the PlayStation 4 kind of fades away, and while I'm playing stuff just for fun, I do like that on my other screen I can pull up Discord or a YouTube video or just whatever I want. And I think that systems that are smart are kind of moving in this direction, which is not necessarily adding in all these different secondary apps, but instead giving us the option to tailor how we want to play and when we want to play and the style as to which we want to play. Now, the final thing I really want to look at is this interesting thing that was done by Digital Foundry. Now, I just want to say real funny, I find it humorous. A lot of people have been calling Digital Foundry like Sony fanboys because they are impressed by this technology. Digital Foundry, and I mean this as a compliment, these are dry old European dudes. They don't care about bias. They're just tech reviewers. Well, they've been doing some stuff showing off the difference of backwards compatibility, and the most interesting change is that pretty much anything you put into a PlayStation 5 is going to be improved. I'm glad they showed this one specifically. So I own every copy of every Final Fantasy game, and that includes multiple copies of Final Fantasy 15, and I am going to personally test stuff, but I do think it's interesting that with these next-gen consoles, just by owning the disc and putting it into the system, it is going to be upgraded natively. These games are getting pushed to 60 frames a second. A lot of them actually get the solid-state drive advantages. It is so intriguing to me that these games that we've already owned, that we've already loved, are just going to get better as we go into the next generation at absolutely zero cost. There will be a few games that have like a special bonus edition, but all of this sounds great. Reading a bunch of PlayStation 5 reviews today, I do think that this system is going to have a good launch. Not perfect, I do think that some people are going to have a couple troubles with it, but as a person who has it pre-ordered, at this point I'm counting the seconds till I can pack that bad boy up. I'm going to be doing a review myself next week. Be sure to check that out. But until then, I hope you guys are doing good. I have a Bug Snacks review coming out on Monday. Be sure to watch that. I've done some reviews this week. And now I got to get back to editing. Thanks so much for watching, gamers. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, share with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. But do me the biggest favor of all and keep dreaming. I can't believe I'm so hyped for backwards compatibility, but I honestly am. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.